Thank you guys. Thank you everybody for joining me. My name's David. I'm a family physician and the director of residency advising division. My goal for you guys is hopefully to lower your blood pressure about this new supplemental application. Nobody's an expert at this thing, right? It just came out. They just announced it this year. It's brand new to the whole cycle, but they published information about it from ERAS. So I'm going to walk you through the salient points today, just so you have a frame of reference. We're going to talk about the steps of the application. Then I'm going to give you a little bit of subjective information on how I think you should approach them. Generally, they're straightforward. And then you should be able to work through these with your advisor for any specifics at that point. But this should be a relatively painless part of the application. So let's jump ahead to the first slide here, and we'll take a look at some of the information we're going to be talking about. Most important is the timeline, right? Is the thing is not quite out yet. So first they announced it, and then basically it's going to open on September 1st and run all the way till September 30th. You can access these window specifics on the website. I'm not going to go into any details too much, because you can just go ahead and Google ERAS supplemental application, and it's going to take you to a full PDF that'll kind of walk you through with all the details, the nitty gritty about it. So you got your resource out there, but just generally think of it for now as it runs from September 1st to September 30th. Now, since applications will be available to program directors in September, typically when we talk about preparing your ERAS application, there's no advantage to doing it early. In this case, I would recommend getting it done right away. So as soon as you're ready preparing your application, whether it's now before September 1st or it is on September 1st, just go ahead and try to get the ERAS application, the supplemental portion, done as soon as possible. Again, there's no competitive advantage here, but you want to basically have a full, complete package to present to programs when the time comes. So let's check out the next slide, look at some of the questions here. Oh, sorry, before that. So if you're tuning in and you're not from one of these three specialties, you can go ahead and log out and feel real good about yourself. For now, the test pilot programs here are internal medicine, both categorical and prelim years, derm and general surgery, just categorical years for the general surgery application. I would expect, just anticipating that, my guess is this is going to become the new norm, and this is going to be rolled out to more and more specialties over each cycle and throughout the year. But for now, it's just these three. Now, not every program in these specialties is participating. On the ERAS website, you can access a full resource for it. But generally speaking, if you're in these residencies, you're going to be completing the ERAS supplemental. There's just one application for all the programs. It's not quite like secondaries. So if you remember from applying to medical school, you've got a primary application, you submit it, then you get requests for secondaries. It's not like that. The supplemental is not a true secondary. It's just part of the primary application, but distinct and separate from it. So come September 1st, if you're in these specialties, you're going to get a request for it more than likely. It's going to be automatically sent out to you, so no worries about trying to access it, with more information on how to go ahead and complete it. So there's going to be three sections. Now, there's a research part, which I'm going to talk about at the very end, which is very straightforward, but let's just talk about the writing portion first. So since we made a reference to kind of the comparison between the supplemental application and your old secondaries that you completed as a pre-med, this should be very familiar if you're an MD, is that you're basically going to go ahead through ERAS and basically fill out what I call the work and activities section, which is just your experiences, clinical activities, volunteer stuff, research. You have the opportunity in the supplemental application to designate 5 experiences most meaningful. For what purpose? I'll be honest with you, I don't know. There is plenty and plenty of room in your ERAS application to discuss why these experiences were most meaningful to you, but this is what they're doing. So ERAS says that you don't have to choose all 5, and I agree with that. You don't need to feel pressed to distinguish 5 of them, but you should distinguish some of them and characterize these as most meaningful. Most people then ask, well, What will programs want me to select as most meaningful? And that's a bad approach to this question, I think, is that if you try to think, what does this general surgery program want me to think of as most meaningful, it's going to come off a little bit contrived. Pick things that you're passionate about, that are important to you. It's going to be a lot easier to convey that passion and your excitement for those activities in that section. So rule of thumb number one is choose something that's meaningful to you, not what you think a program should think is most meaningful, if that makes sense. Now, the other rule of thumb I'll give you is that you don't have to choose any kind of activities for this program. So let's say, okay, applying to family medicine, maybe family medicine is going to consider things, maybe weigh humanistic activities or volunteer activities over research-oriented things. And statistically speaking, in family medicine, you don't have to have a lot of research activities to match. Well, I think that's fine, and you could do all leadership or all clinical activity. I think the best approach is to try to diversify your activities a little bit, not because any specialty or any program prefers one kind of experience over the other, but only because this gives you an opportunity to present yourself as multidimensional, right? You kind of paint yourself into a corner if you just put in 5 research activities, right? That just makes you seem a little bit heavy towards academics, maybe less towards other things. Now, with 5 activities, if you choose all 5, you may not be able to make 5 different types of activities for all of them. Don't worry, just make an attempt to make it diverse. You don't have to have 2 of one kind, 2 of another, and 1 of a third type. Just try to make sure they represent different parts of yourself, different parts of your application. So this may be the only complicated part of the ERAS application. Again, this should be pretty straightforward though. Take from your work and activities, you should start doing your primary ERAS application first, write them all out, get that stuff all out, then go and you can select 5 and you're going to put that into the supplemental portion. The next portion is going to be geographic preferences. Very straightforward. You're going to be able to basically specify 2 different things. You're going to basically look at a map of the US and you're going to have a drop-down menu to select West Coast, Central, Southern, Northeast, Northwest. You're going to be able to select by geographic location there. You can also designate your interest in rural versus metropolitan/urban centers. Now, this is a way for you to communicate to programs, that a specific type of medicine that you're interested, despite maybe applying to, a broad swath of different programs. This is your way to basically signal to them what your preference is. I think it's important to know that this ERAS is not using the supplemental activity to work against you, right? And so if you flag, hey, I'm interested in rural programs, but you're also applying to, let's say, a program in the middle of New York City, they're not going to see that and think, oh, well, we're not going to pay attention to this applicant. Program directors understand that you have to apply broadly. Not every applicant even ends up going where they're interested in, right? You may change based on your interviews. So don't feel like you're actually pigeonholing yourself by selecting this. Don't try to think, again, just like the previous section, don't think what will programs want me to select here. Just go with your straight interest here. And the last point to bring up is that thankfully, at least for general surgery, you're not going to have to do this one. So just the derm and the internal medicine residencies. The next section here is going to be preference signaling. This is for you to designate 3 programs for derm and then 5 programs for the other residencies that you're interested in. Now, I think the context here, and if all this seems a little bit like extra work and clicking buttons to do what you normally do in an ERAS application, I agree with you. This is basically to help programs as they've had increasing numbers of applicants sort through these a little bit quicker, or at least identify certain people that are interested in the program. It's important to understand, and ERAS goes through no end of trying to make this clear, is that this is not a rank order list. So let's take dermatology. Let's say you pick 3 programs, 1, 2, 3. There's no order there, okay? Is that it doesn't submit a list for every program to see what your top 3 interests are. It simply signals to the program that you've designated them. For example, if you are applying in Southern California to UCLA's dermatology program, when they open your application, they're going to get a signal that you've indicated your interest to them. Now, there's lots of ways to signal to programs that you're interested in them before this supplemental application. Typically, applicants would reach out by phone or email or send a letter of interest. This is just a systematic way of doing that. You can still do all those things about reaching out to programs. Sometimes they're busy or you may not have contacts, but this will be a systematic way of identifying, hey, these are my top 5 programs. If you don't have an inkling of what programs you're interested in, do a little research up front and at least make an effort to identify some of them. This does not mean that you're going to match at those top 5 or that you have to match at those top 5 or 3. It just means that you're signaling a special interest in the program. Now, the one last point here, which ERAS, I'm not 100% sure why they did this, but you cannot and should not signal your home institution. They assume that you have an interest in your home institution. I think this is to not step on anybody's toes. So they're asking you not to signal your home program, since that's an implied interest in that program. So that's it for the preference signaling. And that's it. So that's the ERAS supplemental application right there. Now, there is a section where you can, discuss further about your research. I'm not going to go into that, but basically, if there's some research that you are particularly interested in, weren't able to get through it all in the primary portion of your ERAS application, there's more room to discuss your research there. I think bottom line is I want to basically just a quick presentation, quickly run through the stuff to lower your blood pressures that, you've already got a ton on your plate. Prepping your application, it's COVID, it's been a difficult year. This is not a really complicated portion of your application, nor should be thought of as something that really demands a ton of your attention. Your focus should still be on an excellent personal statement, carefully crafted work experience section, and then spending time really digging into programs on the Residency Explorer app so you can really get an understanding of what programs you're eligible for, where you want to go, and where would be a great place to train. This ERAS supplemental application is a little bit of an annoyance, if anything, just to provide some extra information, extra signaling, spend a little bit of extra time identifying those most meaningful activities for you, specify some locations, specify some programs that you're interested in. We're going to be there for you to work through everything. If you do have any questions, my contact is at the bottom. Please feel free to reach out directly. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask your advisors at any point. Everybody's learning as we go. I do encourage you to read through the full PDF on the ERAS supplemental application website just to get familiar about all the nitty-gritty of it. It's not a huge document. It should be a 5-minute read, very easy. But at this time, I like to just open it up. I know some people are joining us live. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to field some of those now. Please go ahead and drop them in the chat function, and we'll see if we can take any questions right now. I'm just pulling open the Q&A right now. Don't see anything there. Chat box is empty. I'll give it just a couple more minutes for anybody that signed in if they'd like to drop any questions. It's a good thing that I don't see a ton of questions coming through. Hopefully it's a pretty straightforward process. I think, while we're just giving some time for questions, the good news here is there's no extra fee involved, which is a nice break. It is worth noting that some programs are instituting secondary applications. If you do get any secondaries, please, feel free to contact me directly or your advisor, of course. There may be some simple questions that they want you to run through as well there. All this should hopefully make for a good cycle for you. Ends up in some interviews, and hopefully we'll be in the new year and constructing a rank order list quite quickly. I don't see there's any questions popping through, so thank you for joining me. I know it's just a quick session to kind of run through this stuff, but hopefully put your mind at ease a little bit so you got a good understanding of what's going to happen on September 1st when the application comes your way. And thank you for joining me.